Welcome to the Contrarians, and tonight our topic is the good, the bad, the ugly, meeting rock star stories. So we've assembled a panel, we've all got stories, we're going to have a great discussion. So without any further ado, let's get this started. Contrarians and to yet another panel discussion. Tonight is going to be a fun topic, kind of a little bit different. The good, the bad, and the ugly, meeting rock stars. We're going to talk about our different experiences, and well, we've all met them, we wouldn't be here. So we're all going to just go around and trade stories, and we're just going to go an hour, keep it loose, and just have a nice general discussion. So I want to welcome, of course, Martin's here tonight. I want to welcome Nick, Rand, the Parish of Rock, and Brett Peters. Nice seeing Brett, nice seeing the Parish. Hell, it's nice seeing all you gentlemen back. So we're just going to have our little discussion, and I guess I'll just start out. Who's here first? Brett, I haven't talked to you in a long time. Let's talk to you, and then we'll go to the Parish, because he could be in a storm. We could lose the Parish at any time, so we have to be careful. And then we'll go to Rand, and then Nick, and then the Martin, and then to me. And we'll just see how we go. So, Brett, why don't you take it away? Nice to see you again.
Yeah, it's fun to finally be back after such a long time.
It has been a while.
I don't know if I'll have as many stories as everyone else. I think for me, this was just something to sit in just to try and hear some cool stories. But I don't know if I've told this story before. I think I might have told it on the one of the Elder videos that me and Marco have done in the past, but I would say this would be a cool experience. For me, it was funny. I don't know if other people might have experienced this. It might have been a different situation, but I got to meet Paul Stanley back in I want to say it was 2007.
Mm-hmm.
I met him at a art gallery in New Jersey, and you had maybe 10-15 minutes with him and everything like that. And one of the first things I told him was the Elder is up there with one of my favorite Kiss records. And he kind of shook his head, put his hand on my shoulder, and told me he felt bad for me.
Brett, it's a great record. I'm going to give
it.
It
Is.
Don't listen to what Paul says.
No, yeah.
If it had sold, if it went quadruple platinum, he wouldn't say that.
Exactly. It's I by that point I was very aware of how they felt about the record. That wasn't anything that wasn't new to me, and I had a feeling that it was gonna get an interesting reaction out of him. Like I said, I feel like maybe if somebody else would have experienced that, maybe they would have had a different, different situation. But for me, I thought it was really funny, and it's a funny story to tell. And then, I guess just keeping with the theme, I met Peter twice, and the first time he was a real jerk to me. Actually, I don't know if that was. It was a disappointing. It was definitely. Maybe saying he was a jerk is a bit harsh, but it was definitely a disappointing situation, because he was at a radio station, and there was maybe 2 or 3 people outside, me being one of them, and he came into the lobby of the radio station, sent a security guard out to hail a cab, and then came through and just blew everybody off, which I understand that happens. I think my problem came in the fact that I was listening to the radio station that he was on my way home from wherever the station was, I can't remember, and he had called back in. He was like, yeah, there's a bunch of fans outside, and I was hanging out with them, and I was talking, and I was taking pictures, and I was signing autographs, and I'm just man, I'm what was the point of that? It's like I said, there was maybe a couple. I understand, obviously people don't have the time and stuff like that. But I think my issue with it came in the fact that he kind of, felt the need to lie to make himself look good after the process. And from my experience with talking with other fans, especially Kiss fans, it's you either catch Peter or Ace on a good day or a bad day. And unfortunately, most of the times it's a bad day for both of them, at least in my experience of like I said, talking to Kiss fans.
Yeah, I've never had that experience. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting though. Excellent.
Yeah.
Anything else? Anything else you want to add?
I met Vinnie Vincent actually back in 2018, and he was another one that people said was really kind of he he was never really in like the spirit to meet people. When I met him, he was super nice, and I got to take a picture with him, and you know, he signed a poster for me and everything like that. That was a really cool experience. But that's it for me.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty cool. At least he was cool, you know?
Yeah.
All right. The Parish of Rock. I send it to you.
Okay. I've got 3, and they're under the headings of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'll start with the good. When I was growing up in my late teens, I lived in a small town called Rickmansworth, that was just to the northwest of London, and we would regularly go to the pub, probably on a Friday, and there was a pub called the Feathers, and this would have been probably 80, 81, 82. It certainly wasn't earlier than 80, because I never went underage drinking at all, so it couldn't have been before 1980. So we would go there and we'd look in the car park before we went in the pub to see if there was a particular car there. And the car we were looking for was a Flash. I remember it as a red Porsche, but maybe it wasn't a red Porsche, but it was certainly a Flash sports car. And because if the car was in the car park, then it meant one of our biggest stars, if you like, for me and my mates was in the car park. And we grew up in the early 70s watching Top of the Pops. And the guy that we were looking for was the drummer of Sweet, Mick Tucker.
Oh.
So Mick Tucker would drink in the Feathers. And he used to dress, and so this was, as I say, 1980, 81. So it would have been at the time when Brian Connolly, the singer, had left the band, probably a year or two before the band actually split up. But to us, he was still a megastar. And to him, he was still a megastar because he dressed like one. Certainly my memory was every time he was in the pub, he had leather trousers, he'd have this big fur coat, he always had this stunning blonde on the arm. And sometimes he would chat with us and sometimes he wouldn't, depending, I guess, what mood he was in. But he did, you know, I have recollection of chatting to him. I remember talking to him about Blondie, who was big at the time, and we were off to see a gig. And I suppose the thing I have the most pleasure in is that he encouraged me to drum. So I'm not a good drummer, but he kind of told me you don't need to be a very good drummer. You just need, particularly if you're playing rock, you just need to be able to keep the rhythm going and let the song and let the guitarists do their bit, was kind of his advice. And luckily I could just about do that. So that's why he's the good, because he encouraged me to do the drums. I can't recall how many times we saw him. My recollection was quite a lot, but 40 odd years later, it may not have been that many times. And I kind of built it up in my mind a bit more than it was. But he was certainly in there a few times. And on a sad note, he's actually buried in the next town along, actually, about 5 miles away. So I know he lived in the area. So I guess that's why that's where he was buried. So that's the good. The bad is in the mid-2000s, I was dropping my son off to a festival. And by this time, I'd kind of decided I wasn't going to go to festivals anymore. So my son would have been about 15, 16. He was camping. So I wanted to drop him off as close as I could to the gates of the festival, which luckily I managed to blag myself to the point where I managed to get in quite close, dropped him off. And then I had to look for somewhere to turn around the car. And I saw this compound. So I went into this compound to turn around the car. And as I went in, I was surrounded by these security guards who started asking me what was I doing there. It wasn't for the public. I wasn't supposed to be there. And despite me trying to explain to him or to them what I was doing there, it was getting kind of a bit more uglier and difficult, really. And then all of a sudden, from the background came this sort of London Cockney voice that said, "It's all right, he's with me." And then pushing through them was Billy Idol. And Billy Idol wandered over and he said, "It's all right, he's with me. I need to talk to him." So I got out the car and he said something like, "All right, we need to look as if we're having a chat for a few minutes." So I explained what was going on. And he said to me, and I also did my Columbo bit, my wife's a big fan and I'm a big fan and we've got all your records, all that kind of stuff. And he said, "Well, if you're that big a fan, what was my first hit when I went solo?" So I said, "This song, Dancing with Myself." And if you can see that, you'll see I was wrong, because that was actually a Generation X song. And he said, "No, you're wrong. That was the last Generation X song." He said, "But nonetheless, you clearly know something about my past." He said, "Wait here," and he wandered off. And I'm thinking, oh, he's going to come back with, I don't know, merchandise or tickets or something. Anyway, he went over and spoke to the security guards, and then he disappeared. I didn't see him again. And then one of the security guards came over and said, he's told us to give you a VIP ticket so you can park in the car park around the corner and it'll get you into the festival. So he was playing, he was actually on headlining the second stage. So I was able to go in. I saw him, kind of rekindled my interest in Billy Idol, because I had liked him during the 80s. I'd just kind of, I suppose, like most people by the mid 2000s, forgotten about him. He released an album about the same time. And called, what was it called? Kings and Queens of the Underground, which is actually a really good album. And I followed him ever since, and I'm sort of a big fan now, and sort of watch him see him every time he comes over and plays live, etc. So I've classed that as the bad because of what could have happened. I think if he hadn't turned up, he probably saved me from something that could have been quite bad. So that's my bad. And then the ugly is we were on a holiday flight to the Caribbean from the UK. This would have been around 2000. We've sat in our seats. We're in the cheap seats, the cattle class, you know, sort of cheapest seats you can get. And my wife goes to me, that bloke over there, he looks a bit like Rick Wakeman. Now, you've got to appreciate my wife has no knowledge of Yes or Rick Wakeman at all. And he wasn't sat there with a big cape and collar and keyboards around him. So there was no giveaway, but he was on the telly quite a lot at the time. And she just recognised him off the telly. So I said, nah, that's not Rick Wakeman. He wouldn't be sat down here in the cheap seats with us. He'd be up in first class or business class. So I said, no way is that Rick Wakeman. Anyway, about an hour later, after the flight's taken off and everything, this guy walks past and he turns and looks at me as he's going up to the toilet. He looks at me and goes, I am Rick Wakeman, actually. So he'd obviously heard the discussion. Because we'd seen him on the telly, we knew his accent and his voice, so it was definitely him. Yeah. And then he walked past and sat down, didn't speak to him at all on the flight. But the holiday complex we were on, he was at the same holiday complex. And every time we saw him, he'd nod and say hello, and we'd nod and say hello back as if we were best mates. But that was it. That was the extent of the discussion. So that was kind of the ugly, because I think it was a bit unfair that my wife was right and I was wrong. And that actually was Rick Wakeman sat there in the cheap seats. So there you go. So those are my three.
Wicked. Very nice, Parish. Yeah. Grant, you're muted, I think.
Oh, crap. Rand, you're up.
Yeah.
So's Rand. Rand's muted. He's there. There you go.
All right, I'm good. So this is so funny. My first one's going to be the good, the bad, and the ugly. When me and some friends in 1975 went to see Pink Floyd at the Cow Palace, and he said they were here last night. He goes, I know where they're staying. They're staying at the Sir Francis Drake Hotel. When the show's over, I'm going to follow their limos because I know where they parked. And I'm going, God, what is this guy, a CIA agent or something? And so we do that, and they're going into 4 different limos. And, because I don't think they really like each other even back then. And so we followed them across the San Francisco Bay Bridge at 100 miles an hour and got to the hotel. And we actually beat them before they could get out of the car. And I said, oh, man, I love David Gilmour so much. He played so good tonight. They did like a 30-minute version of Echoes to end the show. I was like, we were standing in the middle of the floor, couldn't sit down. And it was like, this is just Pink Floyd heaven, right? So I'm just going to go up to the limo as he's getting out of the car. And I say, hello, David, welcome to California. And he goes, thank you. And the guy goes, they were here last night. I told you that. That was the bad. And then we got into the elevator with him, and we are really ripped, right? Because it was everywhere. If you breathed, you were stoned. And so we're in the elevator and stuff, and Roger Waters goes, push top floor or whatever, that bar, whatever. And I'm going like, I could barely move. I just kept staring at Gilmour. I was like, that is the coolest dude, man. I love the way he plays. And my brain's just going crazy. And I'm thinking, where is the elevator buttons? And David goes, never mind, I've got it. And he comes over he hits my shoulder. My shoulder goes backwards like this, like in slow motion or something. And he hits the thing and we go up. Now I'm wearing a Yes t-shirt. And we get up to the top and the guy goes, we have a dress code. You can't come in with that shirt. And David's going, he's with us. They're not with us. And it was getting all kind of weird already. And I'm going, this is close to stalking. And the guy goes, listen, I've got a shirt in the trunk of my car. Here's the keys. He goes, it's blue. Go put it on. So I go down there, and I'm like twice as big as the shirts. I put it on. It makes me crimped, and everything. You tell the buttons are just ready to blow off. And so I come back up, and they let us in and stuff. And of course, they went off to their own little cubby areas and stuff. And we had to sit on the other side of the bar. And I'm just staring at them. And God, man, it's Pink Floyd. Can you believe it? We're in a bar with Pink Floyd. This is unbelievable. And the waitress lady comes up and goes, "You guys have to drink or you're going to get thrown out." And I'm going, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Well, I don't drink alcohol, so I'll order a tequila sunrise and tell them to hold the tequila." And so it's basically just grenadine juice and orange juice. And that cost $2.50 in 75. So we're watching the band and everything, and you can see it. It's just like the movie in Pompeii. Roger's in an argument with somebody about something right away, and David Gilmour's just like this at the table going like this. Wow. Just like out of the movie. And I'm going, "This is crazy. What's going on here?" And he goes, "Man, we got to go. We can't afford to just sit here and drink." Like, and the tickets were like $5 to see Pink Floyd. It was nuts. And that was my meeting Pink Floyd story.
Nice.
But the good, bad, and the ugly, right?
All in one. All in one.
We were nuts.
That was wicked.
That's good.
Yeah. But the thing that it just made me feel so stupid was, here I am walking up to California, and they'd already played the first show that I
Yeah.
and he told me that, and that just went right through my brain, and I forgot about it.
Well, you're probably shocked that you were in that situation. You just kind of overwhelmed,
Yeah.
Didn't register.
And then another cool thing that I got to do was meet the Tubes. The same year, they were doing colleges. They just started their first album. I mean, they just done their first album, and they were playing the single "White Punks on Dope" and more of the. Actually, they were playing "What Do You Want from Life" on the radio, and they were playing these small colleges. And my girlfriend at the time, Marie, happened to work at the college in the theater part of the college, and so she got us in and stuff. And I got to meet everybody but Fee. I got to meet Rick, and I got to meet Michael, and I got to meet Bill and Roger and Prairie. And I tried not to make an ass out of myself. Pretty good. I did all right, but their show was great and everything. And that was cool. And then at that same college, I met Bill Champlin, and that guy was a total douchebag. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. Maybe you could edit that out.
I could if you would want. If you want me to, I can do that.
Yeah, please. I don't want that going out in the public. I'm sorry. And I got to meet Peter Gabriel too after his show in San Francisco. I had to go get gas, and he came in in a station wagon with two beautiful women on both sides of him. He was sitting in the middle. He was wearing a silver jacket, like one of those space things, those space blankets.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like it's just a cool looking jacket and everything. And it was him. I knew it was him. So I thought, okay, I'll just do something stupid, because I was kind of out of my mind anyway. I just watched television yesterday and today, and Peter Gabriel. And so I walked up to him and started talking to him in a British accent. I told him how much I love Watch of the Skies and Supper's Ready and stuff like that. And these girls, they had no idea what I was talking about. And they go, "What is he talking about?" And he just looks out the window and goes, "Nothing. He's full of shit." That's the ugly.
That's ugly.
He's my idol. I mean, I love Peter.
Rand, why would you go talk to him in a British accent when you're not British?
I don't know. What, in 75? I was 23 years old, man.
All right. Well, you still should know better at 23 years old.
Yeah, it was stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, we might want to edit that out too.
Oh no, that's too good to leave. No,
Yeah.
I'll edit the other one. That's staying, baby.
And then later on in 2001, I got to meet Yes. We had to pay for it. It was a meet and greet. It was $60 for lunch and getting to meet Yes. And I had my guitar with me because I was waiting for them to come out for the meeting. And I was playing Yes all day long and singing and everything.
Okay.
Nobody cared. But I walked up to Steve Howe, and I'm one of the few people that got to shake his hand. I put my left hand out, very gentle, like this. And I said, "I'm a guitar player too." And he knew that was my playing hand. And he shook my left hand with his left hand. So it was pretty cool. And I said, "When you want to sign my guitar?" And Steve goes, "No, if I sign your guitar, it's no longer your guitar, it's my guitar. You should put your own name on your guitar." I'm going, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
And then we went down the road. We got to meet everybody and met Alan White. And I go, Alan, I got something to tell you. You're not going to believe this. When I listen to Going for the One, I hear Wah Wah by George Harrison, and he goes, I played on that song. They didn't get credit though. None of the drummers got credit for that album. They just said their names. They didn't say which song they played on, and it's the same feel. I couldn't believe it. And he goes, anybody ever told you that before? And he goes, no, you're the first. And I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. He also told us he liked John Lennon. I mean, John Lennon liked Yes a lot, and he was really taken to heart. He took to heart when they used the "Give Peace a Chance" thing in Your Move and stuff, and the Lennon quotes and stuff. He was really happy about that. And Chris Squire, I talked to him about his fretless bass use and stuff. And I said, I hear fretless on The Gates of Delirium at a certain point. And he goes, yeah, I did use it. Because I knew he used it in Close to the Edge, but they just never made a big thing out of it in those days. And this, 74, there was no way to find things out. It was crazy. But when I met John Anderson, shook his hand, I just felt like I'd been given a charge of electricity from the universe. That guy is Mr. Magic. If you ever get to meet John Anderson, try to shake his hand because it's just something different. I don't know how to explain it, but that was one of the coolest meetings ever, was getting to meet Yes. That was just so awesome.
Cool.
And then after that, I got to at ProgFest 95 in LA. I got to hang out because it's easy to hang out.
Come on,
with those
Ray,
bands.
move it along.
Move it along. Yeah, I am. They were everywhere. He's the keyboard player. Clive Nolan is the keyboard player for Pendragon, and I got to hang out with him for like 2 days, off and on. He gave me an Arena album. He listened to my music on cassette and stuff. It was pretty special. I'm done.
All right, cool, excellent. Rand could go all day if you haven't noticed, but Rand's had a lot of experience. He's met a lot of people. He gets out there. All right, let's throw it over to
And
Nick.
by the time he got to the last one, he's talking about someone who's about almost as famous as Rand himself. So
there you go. All right, Nick Esquire, let's throw it over to you.
Yeah, hey Grant, thanks. I appreciate
sure.
it. I'm on location, and I apologize I have to hold the phone. I forgot my little holder. Spoiler alert, I've never had a negative, bad, or ugly experience with a rock star. So mine have been pleasant or perhaps maybe memorable or non-memorable, but I've never had a bad or ugly. I'm going to give some tips. I'm not an expert, but just based on my experiences, either as a fan or someone that's been backstage a couple times, I'm going to give some tips each round on what has worked for me in making an experience memorable or something that is just beyond hi, can you sign this or something. One thing I noticed is that musicians, artists, rock stars do not like to necessarily talk about themselves, and it's kind of boring to talk about songs and your guitar solo and that kind of thing. So what I've tried to do is I try to find, if I have if I know I might be able to meet somebody, I try to find something out about them and do a little research, do a little prep, do a little planning, and that has put me in good stead. And I'll give you a couple examples. First, I was lucky enough to be in a band that opened for Gary Hoey, who's a great independent type artist. And I knew or did some research, and I found out that he was producing Lita Ford, an album that actually still hasn't come out yet. It's going to come out this year, I understand. But so I knew he was producing her. So after the show, we had a chance to sort of meet up with him. And as an icebreaker, I was wearing a Lita Ford shirt. And I didn't have to say anything. He goes, nice shirt. I said, yeah. And so we talked about Lita a bit and his stuff. But it was a good icebreaker to at least acknowledge that I knew he was producing her. Second example would be Ian McLagan. Met him after a show, and he was signing all of his merch, all of his stuff. And he was quite smitten with my lady. But I presented him with a CD to autograph, and it was this one, which had just come out. And it was Lucinda Williams, and I knew that he had played on it. So when I presented with the CD, he said, "Oh, Lucinda," and that just launched him into talking about Lucinda for like 5 minutes, on and on and on about how wonderful she is, and I love her, and blah blah blah. As a matter of fact, he signed it, and he says here, "Cheers, Stacy Mack," and it says, "Lucinda is it." So
Wow.
he really loved talking about her. Of course, he passed away maybe a month or two later, which was kind of really sad, but it was great just watching him light up and talk about something other than his history and a Faces album or Small Faces. Next example, met Robin Trower behind a venue. He was sitting in a suburban, black Suburban, signing autographs, meeting people. I waited in line, presented him with an album for Earth Below to sign, but I said to him, "Hey, how's the album coming along with Jack?" As if I knew Jack Bruce, but I knew that the two of them had reacquainted and were producing an album which came out a year or so after I met him, and with a perfect English gentleman accent, he said, and this was amazing. He just went, "Lovely, lovely," which is phenomenal that anyone with a British accent would say "lovely" in an unironic, unsarcastic way to me, especially Robin Trower. But his eyes lit up, and we talked a little bit about the album that he was making. So I try to find things about artists that are going on with them other than their album or what solo they played on the third track, on the third this, of the third whatever. And that seemed to be has kept me in good stead. Last example. I've had an opportunity to open for Stars and also met them at another gig. And I knew that their drummer, his real name, Jeff Grob, but Jeff's full-time gig has been for many years he's been a landscape architect. And so got a chance to speak with him. And then he and I started talking about landscape architecture and arborvitaes and dealing with local municipalities and meetings and zoning hearing boards. And it had nothing to do with music whatsoever. And he and I talked for about 5 to 10 minutes with my lady, who happens to serve on a planning commission. So it was things totally unrelated to music. And he was just on and on and on. It was just a great conversation. And I enjoyed it thoroughly. And I think he did too. So that's my tip number one. Do some prep, do some planning, and talk about things that other than music or other than things that they're involved in.
Cool. Awesome. All right. I guess we'll throw it over to Martin.
All right. Well,
He probably has a list. So
I'll give 3 examples here, and I'll give an ugly one from Risa. This is a sworn me off ever going out anymore and doing anything anymore ever again. So so when we went and saw the launch of the Pink Floyd museum show in Toronto here, right? So we get there. My buddy Tim Henderson's with me. Everything's great. We chat a little bit with Aubrey Powell from Hypnosis. He was super nice, so I had a nice little chat with him. Bob Ezrin, I think we quickly said hi to, had a little chat with him. Then they do this little talk. Michael Cole is there, like legendary, huge concert promoter, the guy who put on Rolling Stone Steel Wheels and all that, blah, blah, blah. Pink Floyd early. Dave Marsden's there, radio guy. But afterwards, we're supposed to get some interviews done, and we're thinking, oh, should we try and get some stuff signed and all this by Poe? And, So we get bumped on the interview thing, and then we're listening in, and Michael Cole's like tearing a strip off the PR people saying, I said no interviews. There's not supposed to be any interviews. So all these people are supposed to get interviews. Nobody's going to get an interview, right? So it goes on, and then it gets kind of chaotic. I eventually get to sit down with Poe. But, we're like right in the middle of the museum show. There's people walking around all over the place. It's dark. I kind of get him to sign a couple things. You could tell he doesn't really want to do it. And it's like, this kind of crashed in flames, right? I can't hear him. He can't hear me. We do a quick little interview and it's kind of over. So, I envision this kind of like neat, copacetic hanging out with Aubrey Powell and asking a bunch of Hypnosis questions, but it crashed in flames pretty quickly, and we were too kind of intimidated to bring anything out, for Bob Ezrin to sign, although he was a super nice guy. We got to talk to him after as well, and he told us working on Alice Cooper, The Road. So that was one that just kind of went south. Nothing went right. We were there a long time. We were shuffled around. We didn't get what we were supposed to get, blah, blah, blah. All right. So, a couple of good ones. Well, I'm gonna just do kind of a general one of a theme thing. So like Nick, I have a bit of a theme here. It's not the same idea as Nick, but I always felt like I was kind of getting away with murder when I got to interview people who weren't in the hard rock heavy metal realm for our magazine, right? So I would be working for Goldmine or Chart or something like that. So along the way, I got to interview the likes of the couple of the New York Dolls guys, Gang of Four. Mike Scott from the Waterboys. These are all in person, at the venue and stuff. Graham Parker for Goldmine. That was a hero of mine. Got to meet him, sit down and did a 10 albums with him down at the Horseshoe. So that was always cool. John Cale at the Lula Lounge here in Toronto. I even wrote down the date of that, November 14th, 2005. Intimidated as hell, to talk to him, but he was super nice, signed all my stuff, and had a great little interview. I think he was on the Homo Sapiens album, I believe. And at the same venue, the only 2 times I've ever been to this venue, Arthur Brown. Oh. So sitting down with Arthur Brown and watching his sound check with the big cane thing, and he's like testing it. The main brunt of his sound check was seeing, how does my big staff sound when I pound it on the floor, right? That's all he wanted to get done. But he was just an absolute sweetheart. So that was cool as well. Okay, I'll give one more good one, I guess. Let's see, what do we go with here? Okay, so this kind of falls within the theme of I'll leave that one. Yeah, Soundgarden. I met a couple of Soundgarden guys, got stuff signed by all of them, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, at a hotel. But the Kiss one is pretty neat. So here was a situation. Actually, hang on for a sec. let's pull this out here. This book isn't out yet. Kiss at 50. It's out next month. This is my new hardcover Kiss book, right? So full color throughout, blah, 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 50 career highlights. But I got a picture in here. So what happened was Dave McMillan, good buddy who worked at the record label, said, hey, you want to come by an industry event, meet all of Kiss? It's like, yeah, hell yeah. So this was for the Monster launch thing. And I remember it was rush hour. I had to drive across town. It was pouring rain into this crowded, weird little studio area west of Toronto. I thought I was going to be late. I was just so frazzled by the time I got there. But yeah, we got in, drinking beers, standing around with all these label people. All of Kiss is there, getting pictures with them, getting stuff signed, chatting them up. And I have a memento of that went in my, here's the introduction to the book. So, and there's a whole bunch of my signed Kiss stuff that I got to stick in the book. But the cool thing here is there's a picture from that event that I got stuck in here too, of me kind of hanging out with all of them, right? Yeah, so that was great. And a lot of people I knew, like industry people, and just in a nice, relaxed after driving there, situation with all those guys there. So that was amazing. I had never in person met anybody from Kiss before that. And just for the record, so just to finish it off in terms of meeting Kiss guys. So had a sit down dinner with Bruce Kulick and John Corabi when they did the Union stuff. So we were writing the bios and things like that. So that's one time. Peter Criss was a funny one. There was a whole, I had a table of all my books in one of these record show, comic show, fan show / things. Lita Ford was there. Dee Snider was there. Ken Kelly, who did Love Gun and Rainbow Rising cover art, he was there. Peter Criss was there, and he was making tons of money signing autographs for everybody, right? But I knew, the guy who was kind of taking care of Peter. So as he came out of the washrooms, which was right next to my table, I said, "Do you think Peter could sign a couple things for me here?" And he says, "All right, okay, two." So he came by the table, and Peter signed a couple things and chatted for a little bit. So that was amazing. And then Ace Frehley, after a show, Tim Henderson and I got to hang with Ace backstage after one of his shows. He was super nice to us. So that was cool. So those are all my full-on ever meeting the Kiss guys. I've had phoners and things, but those were the only meetings with the Kiss guys. Well, yeah, Eric Singer once after an Alice Cooper thing where we met Alice Cooper. So yeah, there you go. Those are my examples.
So Rand, did you get to meet Arthur Brown? You remember that Yes tour with Asia, and Arthur Brown was signing autographs? You met Roger Dean. Did you get to meet Carl Palmer that night too?
No, I just met Roger outside the.
I got to meet Arthur Brown and Carl Palmer and all that. It was phenomenal.
They were great. I really enjoyed that. The first time I'd ever seen Arthur Brown, that guy's nuts.
Yeah, but he was so good. His performance.
I know. And Bumblefoot was incredible.
Right. Well, to start off mine, today is a sad day in Ohio. I just want to say, Rob Fetters announced on Facebook today that Chris Arducer from the Bears, Psychodots, and the Raisins passed away this morning. Oh, really? I don't know what happened.
Love the Bears. Yeah.
Love the Bears. Here's the Bears. Here's Chris right here. Great drummer, great songwriter. Here's Psychodots disc. There's Rob Fetters and everybody. Seen the Psychodots many times down in Cincinnati. Incredible band, incredible drummer. I've just seen them a lot, and I've never really talked to any of those guys, but it's just I don't know if he was sick or what. But anyway, Rob announced it today. It's a sad day here in Ohio, but life goes on. But people I've missed, I have met John Entwistle at the NAMM show. Back when I worked at a guitar store in the 80s, I got to go to the NAMM show like every year. So there were plenty of people running around there. So I got to meet John Entwistle, who I thought he was very tall, which I didn't realize. He signed something. I met Vivian Campbell at the DiMarzio booth, or was it at the Dean booth? I think he was at the DiMarzio booth, and he's very short. I was surprised. Met Bruce Kulick, and he just he really didn't give two squats about anything. He seemed very arrogant, but I've seen him on shows and he seems very nice, but I don't know. I didn't care for him too much. My buddy almost knocked Lee Rittenauer down the stairs because at NAMM they would do concerts in the evenings, and Lee Rittenauer was coming down the stairs. My buddy was coming up and damn near smacked right into him. And he's like a short little guy. Who else? Oh, I briefly jammed with Steve Vai at, I don't know what booth it was. It might have been the Ibanez booth. I was playing a guitar, and it just so happens that Steve Vai was playing guitar next to me. So there you go. I jammed with Steve Vai.
Nice.
though I had no idea that's what I was doing. Saw Paul Dina Loverboy at the NAMM show. God, probably others, but I've already told this story before. But my claim to fame is that I sold Rick Nielsen a '61 Les Paul Jr. back in 1986, and we got to go backstage, hung out with them, stayed backstage the whole show, hung out in their trailer with Bunny. Robin Zander, who he appeared to be God's gift to every woman on the planet. And he knew it. And Rick Nielsen just acted very odd. The most normal guy was John Brandt, the bass player, and Bunny Carlos. And they were just hanging out, and I was just talking music with Bunny because that's what he's into. He's like a big music collector. So yeah, we were just talking, and he was talking, hey, Dream Police will be out on CD in a month. He's talking just shit like that, CDs and stuff. He's all into it. Other than that, I met Todd Rundgren before, but I have not had a bad experience. Cheap Trick was the most interaction I've ever had with any band or anything, because that was like the whole evening, so it was really cool though. I'll never forget it. But
I got to tell another quick story.
Go ahead.
So I remember one time we were, I think it was with Dave McMillan from the Label again, but myself, I don't know if Tim Henderson was with us, but this was a morning meeting with Sebastian Bach, right? And so we're just sitting having breakfast with Sebastian Bach. We all sit down, and yeah, it was pretty early. It's like 8 or 9 in the morning, eh? And so everybody's ordering and stuff. And Sebastian goes like completely politely to the guy. He says, "Could I just get a hot bowl of bourbon, please? Just a bowl, like heat up the bourbon, just a hot bowl of bourbon. Would that be all right?" And the guy looks at me, he's all confused. Then I'm just joking with you. I thought that was pretty funny, but yeah.
I got one real quick one.
Go ahead, Brian. We're good.
One of my special nights was my band was in a little town in California called Garberville, California, in Humboldt County, and there was a young lady, not a young, well, she wasn't that young, but anyway, there was a short lady, blonde lady that was wanting to sing with us, and the guys are going, "Hey, that gal wants to sing with us. I don't know who she is. Do you think we ought to do it?" I go, I looked at her real close, and I went, "Hell yeah, that's Lydia Pence from Cold Blood. Let's let her do it." And she came up, and she was like Janis Joplin. I mean, it was just unbelievable. And the two guys in the band are looking at me like, "Good call." It's like crazy. Yeah. She was so sweet, and she just sang her ass off.
Nice. Nice.
Well, we've got a little bit of time. Anybody else have anything else to add?
I've got a story of the rock star I haven't met.
Okay.
Okay. So I live in a place that's actually called the Parish of Rock, which is hence why I use that as the name. And just up the road, probably 5 miles away, if that, so we're practically neighbours, is probably the biggest rock star that you can think of. And I've lived here for 20 years, and he's lived here a lot longer. And that rock star is Robert Plant.
Wow.
And Robert Plant goes out in the local town, which is, sort of 10 minutes away from where I live, and he's regularly in the supermarket. My son has seen him down the pub, so he's regularly in the pubs. His kid goes to the local school, and yet in 20 years, I've never met him. I've not even seen him the other end of the supermarket. So I've kind of concluded, I think he's avoiding me. I think he's purposely trying to sort of, he finds out if I'm coming into town, and he gets out and he goes somewhere else. That's what I reckon, because I think it's harder for me not to have met him in those 20 years than it would have been to have actually seen him or met him. But I do have a solution. I've decided I'm going to buy a Contrarians shirt and wear that around town. And I reckon once he knows I've been on the Contrarians and I've got a shirt, he's going to come looking for me. And I'm going to get a story, which I'll pass across to you, Martin, if I do, about the time I meet Robert Plant in the local supermarket.
I'll give you a quick Zeppelin related one. So I was down, John Paul Jones was backing up King Crimson at Massey Hall, our beautiful theater here. I hope I haven't told this story before to you guys. But yeah, I had no plans to really meet anybody other than I had some stuff that I wouldn't mind, King Crimson guys to sign. I'd interviewed Adrian Belew a couple times. He wouldn't meet with me at this thing, but the security guy took my stuff away, brought my Adrian Belew stuff, and it was all signed and all that. It was nice, and he wrote some little jokey stuff on it. But anyway, so I had one of my old reviews books with me, and I said, "Oh, can you just give this to John Paul Jones? I'd like to just have a quick little short interview with him him for the magazine or whatever. It's like, yeah, I'll take it to him or whatever. The security guy comes back and says, yeah, come back in an hour. He's eating right now. Come back in an hour. He'll see you. And so I was like freaking out. Right. But yeah, so I eventually got there, got ushered in, sat down in his dressing room, just had a lovely chat with him. He was so nice, signed a couple things and did a little interview. And it was just like really kind of like a sweetheart, a soft-spoken kind of guy. And just so I had a little sit down with John Paul Jones. So that was amazing. And what an act they were too. Like him and his band supporting King Crimson. It was such a cool show. I mean, they were more entertaining than King Crimson even was. But yeah, it was really cool. So
Love Adrian.
Was that before them Crooked Vultures?
Yes, I believe that would be before that. Yeah. Feels like about 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Parish, I wanted to say that Eric Clapton has a house actually about 15 minutes away from me in Dublin, Ohio. I'm up in Delaware. I've never seen it, but I've heard people say that, yeah, they'll have like car shows and they'll just be walking around in the car shows. No one ever picks up who it is, but people have seen him. He's around. I've never seen him. He doesn't come up to Delaware, but he's not too far away. But same kind of thing. But yeah. All right. Anybody else? Probably should wind this dog up. Martin and I have another show. Do you have something, Nick?
Oh, I was going to give a couple more tips.
Go ahead.
Prop. If you can use a prop, like I talked about T-shirts or a CD, that's good. A child is also a good prop. I used my daughter once. I went to see Iris Dement. I don't want to explain who that is. You go look her up. Iris is just a wonderful woman, but my daughter was about 8 or 9 at the time, and Iris was really taken with my daughter's glasses, her eyewear. And Iris had very unique eyewear too. So the two of them were chatting about their respective glasses for a few minutes, which was exciting. So I like that. And then besides being a child, I used my youth once. I was about 15 years old and snuck in the local theater turned rock club in my hometown. Kix was headlining that night way back when, right before they were in the March of '85, right after they had opened up for Fraley's Comet and before they were releasing Midnight Dynamite. And a friend of mine and I snuck into the theater right around sound check time, and no one was around except we saw Steve Whiteman, the lead singer, down front. So we approached him, and he sort of turned around like, "What are you two, children doing in here?" But he was very nice, very gracious, very accommodating, and knew obviously we were underage, couldn't see the show that night because it was a over 21 show. And he brought us backstage or to a side room, and in the side room were the two guitar players, Brian Forsyth and Ronnie 1010, who were tuning up their guitars and using their strobe tuners and changing strings, and they were gracious and signed autographs. And being a teenager, that was a great thing. And they knew obviously that we were young kids and couldn't make the show tonight. So they were great and accommodating, and it really made an impression on me. And I been a fan ever since that time in '85. So that's another good. So I have a prop. Another thing, if I was lucky enough that a few times I was in a blues festival as an opening act on the bill, and the headliner was the Holmes Brothers. If you've ever heard of the Holmes Brothers, and the bass player for the Holmes Brothers, Mr. Holmes, Sherman Holmes, did not care for the bass rig that he was provided by the venue / promoter. And I won't say the name of the rig because it was nice, but he was really upset with it. And he turned and he pointed to my rig standing there. He goes, "This is what I want. Whose is this?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go ahead, go for it." So he and I struck up a conversation. He sounded great. He loved it. Fantastic. And Mr. Holmes used my bass rig that night. So that was good. So I've had a few other people actually use the rig too when they came through town, but it'll be too long and involved to get through those stories. So one other thing, confidence or alcohol helps. I know that's been good for me.
Alcohol does help. Yeah.
I told this story on the same episode you talked about Cheap Trick. It was our greatest concert experiences back in March of 22, but alcohol helped fuel my ability with others to sneak backstage at a Willie Nelson / Phil Lesh concert. And I ended up somehow getting on the Honeysuckle Rose, and there I was with Willie Nelson. And I wasn't supposed to be. And that was just transformative experience, courtesy of Yingling Lager. But that was good. It's good to have confidence. I've missed out a few times. I should have been more confident. One quick one with lacking confidence. I saw Simon Phillips in this band called Protocol in a little club in Florida. And afterwards, he was signing autographs. Of course, I bought the CD, and there was a line to see him. And I went into the men's room as I had to go after all those beers. And I looked down at the urinal, and the urinal said Toto. And I was dying.
I've seen that before.
I've seen those too.
do I mention it to him or not? And I bit my tongue and I didn't. I wish I had mentioned it. Oh, that maybe it would have put things in perspective. But he was a good time. And that was another example though of not doing my homework. I didn't know who was in his band, and outside the venue was his guitar player Greg Howe, and I went up to him, shook his hand, and said, "Yeah, hey, you sounded great. Blah blah blah. How are you feeling?" And he looked at me like, I think he might have said, "What the fuck are you talking about?" I thought that I confused him with another, I think, Afro-American guitar player who had health problems. I don't know if it was I don't know. It might have been Tony McAlpine or somebody, but I confused him with somebody, and I thought he had a serious health issue. He looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" Maybe that's maybe a bad or ugly experience, but he was nice about it. He was nice about it, and that was one too many drinks. But I have other tips, but we're running out of time. That's fine. Thanks. This is fun.
Incredible.
I got room for
All right,
two
Grant,
quick
we'll
ones?
wrap her up. We got a show at
No,
7.
we got a live
so,
show at
yeah.
7. We got to.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, it's the Wednesday live show, Rand. Come
Yeah.
on, man. All right,
Yeah.
Can I
everybody.
plug
All
my
right, wrap
album
her
real
up.
quick?
All right, wrapping it up. Brack, thank you. The Parish of Rock. Rand Kelly, Nick Esquire.
Brandon Kelly, No Easy Access on YouTube.
Oh God, there he is with the plug. For God's sakes. All right, everybody.
I found
thanks,
out it was
please,
on YouTube.
All right, see you, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye,
Thanks,
everybody.
guys.
Yeah.
Thanks.